The purpose of this training is to cover the self-direction module related to the DDA programs within the LTSS Maryland system. The focus of this training will be specific to the CCS and will cover what functionality they are expected to perform within the LTSS Maryland system related to assigning FMCS providers to participants. A training guide has been put together that covers all of the functionality that we'll be covering today and will be provided to the CCSs as a reference guide. For today's purposes, we will be utilizing a training environment within LTSS Maryland. The first thing of note for the CCSs is that anytime a person is interested in self-direction, that is a piece of information that can be indicated on their person-centered plan. To identify that, we are going to use a training client within this environment and navigate to their PCP under the Programs area within the left navigation. As you will be able to see, this particular participant has an active and approved PCP for the CP program. And if we go to the view page of that person-centered plan, you will notice that there is a question within the service authorization section that captures whether or not this participant is interested in self-directing their services. As you can see for this participant, the question, "I will self-direct services on this plan," has been set to yes. This is something that the CCS will work with the participant to determine during the PCP development process. If and when this PCP ultimately gets reviewed and approved, an alert will be sent to the CCS notifying them that the person's plan has been approved, and if that is a self-directed participant that has not yet chosen an FMCS provider, the alert will indicate the CCS can now start working with that participant to select an FMCS provider. An example of that alert can be seen on the screen now, where you can see that this person's person-centered plan was approved, and the alert message says, "Please work with this client to assign an FMCS as they have elected to self-direct." It is important to note that this alert will only come to the CCS if and when that PCP is approved, the participant has elected to self-direct, and if they have not yet already chosen an FMCS provider. The CCS can click on that alert message and it will navigate the user directly into that participant's record to our SelfDirection Referrals module. This is the area within the participant's record where the CCS can establish the assignment of an FMCS provider to that participant. In order to do an initial assignment for a participant that has not chosen or is not currently working with an FMCS provider, the CCS can click on the link in the upper right-hand corner called Add Self-Direction Referral. A form will pop up on the screen that the CCS will need to complete. The first thing to do is identify what type of referral you're doing. In this instance, it would be for self-direction. The next thing to do is to identify which FMCS provider agency the participant would like to work with. To see the available options, you would choose the drop-down next to that particular field, and you would choose the appropriate one that the participant has elected to work with. For today's purposes, I'm going to choose FMCS provider agency number 1. And then the second critical piece of information that needs to be identified is what is the effective date that this participant will start working with this FMCS provider. The system will allow you to select any date, whether it's in the past, the current date, or even select a future date. However, specific to the DDA program, during the initial rollout, there is an open enrollment period, and specific guidance will be provided to the CCS on the appropriate effective date to select for FMCS providers. That is specifically for people that are doing new initial assignments and not for participants that are transitioning from one FMCS provider to the next. But again, all of that will be provided through guidance from DDA to the CCSs. For these purposes, I'm going to cover a couple of different scenarios. The first scenario I would like to cover is the initial assignment of an FMCS provider to a participant. I'm going to say that this person wants to start working with this FMCS provider as of today. I can optionally put in any reason for the selection. And another thing that needs to be done is a confirmation of the attestation, which is basically an indicator that says that it is the participant's choice of which FMCS provider they're deciding to choose. So I'm going to answer yes. And then the final step is to click on the Save and Submit button in the upper right-hand corner. What you will then notice is you will be directed back to the self-direction referral list page, a new record will be inserted in the table, which you can see because the effective date is today, it is considered the active. Now, what that means is the FMCS that was selected on that referral is now actively assigned to this participant. That agency will have received an alert notifying them of that assignment, and they can now start working with that participant and accessing their record within LTSS Maryland. So that is the first step of doing an initial assignment of an FMCS provider to a participant. The second scenario I'd like to cover with you is a scenario where a participant would like to transition from one FMCS provider to another. To complete this process, you would identify your participant. Again, you would go back to their self-direction referral module. You would see that they already have an active provider. And so to initiate a transition, you would follow those same steps that we covered before. Again, you're going to click on Add Self-Direction Referral. You would say that you're doing a referral for self-direction, but this time you would choose the new provider agency that they would like to work with. And then again, you will need to select an effective date. Now, for this scenario, again, you have the same options. You could say that the person wants to start working with that new FMCS provider immediately, or the other scenario I wanted to cover with you is post-marking an effective date. So let's say that this participant wants to transition to a new FMCS provider, but we don't want it to take effect until, let's say, August 1st. So I'm going to put August 1st in the effective date. Again, I need to confirm the attestation. And now when I save and submit, you're going to notice something a little bit different. On our self-direction referral page, you're going to see the new record of the transition was inserted, but it's tagged as a pending status. Now, the reason for this is because we have postmarked that effective date. So the system recognizes that because that effective date hasn't been reached yet, it is still pending. So that new FMCS provider will have received an alert notifying them of the assignment, but they will not be actively assigned yet, which means they cannot start accessing that participant's record. What the system will do is monitor, and when that effective date is reached, it will activate this assignment and it will set an end date to the previous assignment so that the system can ensure that only one FMCS provider is working with a participant at a time and that there's no overlapping periods. Now, the next scenario that I can cover with you is as the CCS, let's say that you initiated one of those transfers, you postmark the effective date, and it is in a pending status. And before that effective date is reached, let's say that the participant changes their mind and they no longer wish to transition. What you can do as the CCS is you can go to that pending record, click on the view link, and what you'll notice is you actually have the ability to discard that transfer if it has not yet taken effect. To complete that process, you would click the discard button. You'd specify the reason. So for this instance, I can say participant changed their mind. Confirm your decision. And what you'll notice is that record has now been discarded, which means the previous FMCS provider is still actively assigned, and we've basically gotten rid of that record so that the transition to the new FMCS provider will no longer happen. And then the final scenario I'd like to cover with you is as the CCS, another thing that you have the ability to do within LTSS Maryland is, let's say that a participant is working with a particular FMCS provider. They don't wish to transition, but instead, they no longer need an FMCS provider at all. Let's say they no longer wish to self-direct, or for whatever reason, they just don't need this FMCS assigned to them anymore, accessing their record within LTSS Maryland. As the CCS, we have for you a deactivation process. So to do that, you would identify the active self-direction referral, and you'll see that over under the actions column, we have a function called deactivate. So you would click on deactivate. You'd specify the reason, so you can see we have a standardized list for you. You have to put in comments, and when you confirm that decision, you'll notice that that record will have given an expiration date, which is right here, the date that you actually performed that function, and it is now considered an inactive record. So again, an alert notification will have been sent to that FMCS provider, notifying them of the deactivation, and they will no longer be able to access that participant's record in LTSS Maryland. So from the CCS's perspective, those are the key functionalities to be performed within LTSS Maryland in regards to establishing a relationship between an FMCS provider and a participant.